Good morning, and welcome to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I am glad you have made the connection and are with us today. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and the goal of our show is to explore a wide range of topics that challenge us to see ourselves, our community, and the world around us in ways that get us thinking, get us talking, get us imagining, get us connected. And perhaps inspired or challenged to do just a bit more because we made the connection. Today we have the opportunity to have a conversation with Scott Rue. He's written Everything Has Meaning, What the Tree Stand Murders Taught Me About Life, Death, and Destiny. Welcome, Scott. Very glad you're here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to have you here. And I want to make sure that our audience knows that you can get this book. It's available on Amazon. Scott Rue, the last name is R-O-U-X. And if you just start typing Everything Has Meaning, I did it this morning, whoop, it comes right up. So be sure to consider getting it. You can get it on Kindle as well as getting it in paperback. Even at this moment, I think it's important that we take a pause and understand that there is a reason for us to be here and there is a connection. And that's what the book ultimately shares and helps us understand is about that connection. In reading your book, Scott, in many ways I felt we were having just a conversation. And in another way, it felt like we were working on a jigsaw puzzle of life that we didn't really have the cover to guide us what the picture looked like. We just had the puzzle pieces, and we needed to study the curve and the colors and how it comes together and try and figure out what the picture is, what the meaning is. And I had two big takeaways after I read the book. In one, the takeaway was the Ojibwe faith, death has a mission accomplished feel to it. It is the person's meaning and purpose has been achieved, and there's a welcoming of that purpose being accomplished, and that there's a goodness to that. I also felt that my beloved connection is very important, and that everything is connected, and every moment has meaning.
That's absolutely correct. That's how I feel.
Well, you, in your book, share what I consider three near-death experiences. The first near-death experience is at your birth, when they're giving you your last rites before you're even born.
Yes, that is correct.
The second one was not going on the deer hunt.
Right.
That was near death. If you'd gone, you may not have survived the murders in the deer stand. And number three was being hit by a truck in 2011.
Yeah, that's correct.
So let's start with the first one where before you were born, the priest is there giving you your last rites.
Well, I was informed by my mother, my original sibling mother, Neola, and she told me a story about that, but it was never told to me my whole life. Mm. And she goes, Scott, we were there for 36 hours, and then the last day the priest came in for our last rites. She was very, very young, and so there were some complications with her and myself, and then they did a cesarean. But I was in the complications with both of us. And she didn't go deep to detail, but she did say that the priest came in for our last rites.
You were a big baby.
Yeah.
And she was a small woman.
Yeah, that's true.
And then the next one was the deer hunt.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, for some reason, the year before I went deer hunt with my distant cousins, and I really had a great experience about the deer drives, how they do it, so forth, and just to come out, everyone engaged to do the Wisconsin tradition. And the following year, I had my second child came into my life, and things were tough. My previous wife was laid off, so I had to stay home. Sure. And just thought this was more important in my life to have my children and so forth.
And this was in 2004.
That's correct. And I was requested to go deer hunting twice that time.
Your dad wanted you out there.
Yes,
and you had a great time the year before, and really all the great camaraderie, getting to know your cousins. And this was out in Rice Lake, right?
Rice Lake, Wisconsin. That's correct.
And when you got the call, it was just like, no, this just doesn't work this year. But then you got another call.
Yeah, I got another call, and then even my distant cousin gave me a call, and he was surprised for the second time.
Yeah.
So I decided to have a poker tournament in Minnesota with my local neighbors, and that's what we just did.
But you got a call that was very painful
Oh, that's correct.
as a follow-up while your dad had gone on this trip.
That's correct. November 21st, I got a call around 1:30 in the afternoon. He informed me that he carried my distant cousin out and 5 others that passed away, and my distant cousin, Denny Drew, passed away the following day.
And what had happened was that there was a man that had trespassed.
That's correct.
And they confronted him in that trespassing.
That's
and
correct.
when they confronted him, he became outraged and started shooting.
Right.
And shooting to kill.
That's absolutely true. In my book, I changed the whole story about that because I didn't want to open a can of worms just for other family members because they're still suffering. But I can get into detail with my father, how he reacted, and my distant cousin and another person that passed away. So there was a statistics after these rampage shootings that they either pass away with heart attacks or their health goes depletes.
Right. So there's not only the folks that are literally shot and either injured and have to go through surgeries and survive or killed, but there are those that were impacted that have PTSD, that PTSD can impact their health and shorten their life as well.
That's absolutely correct. I had someone kind of research it. I'm not a doctor, but we had statistics that show that there was a percentage that people pass away within 120 days with these rampage shootings. And my distant cousin, David, did, but he survived it, but his health went down ever since. So their ages were over 50. So those were some messages that I received in my heart to write this book.
Right. And then in 2011, you were going down 169.
That's correct.
There was traffic and the road was under construction, as it always is in the summer in Minnesota, and you took a different route. It was a farm road without any how fast you're supposed to go or any stop signs, and you're going slow. And then what happened?
Well, it was my last call. I had to make sure this account was taken care of, and there was a big detour. And so he said, well, Scott, you can cut 15 minutes out of your way. Just go through this gravel road to this road. And all of a sudden I did that, but I pulled out, but there was no stop sign. And then I received a T-bone. That's what happened to me. I actually got T-bone and had a company car. I was at work and went 360, and that's all I can remember. And they took care of me and took me to the hospital, and had a lot of inside injuries that were that night. And then I had to go see my doctors the following Monday. So.
You didn't think there was anything that was, you knew that you had a sore foot and you knew you had a sore back, and you had a headache.
Oh.
Really bad headache.
Yes, it was the worst I ever had in my life.
But the headache turned out to be something more than a headache.
That's correct. I had a TBI, brain injury, and then I had to restructure my years of speaking and speech, and it was a struggle.
When you have a brain injury, especially on the left side, you have challenges with learning how to talk again, logical sequencing, all of those challenges.
That's correct.
And you were determined.
That's true.
To come back.
I never gave up,
right.
And I think I was just told by my father and others that were surrounded, my loved ones, just never give up in life. And I felt that when I grew in this time in my life. Life is short, but I took a challenge to fight this.
In all of these near-death experiences, including as you were first born,
yes.
as a near-death, then you find out later you came into this world with a near-death. Did you ever feel that was some indicators that allowed you to do a pause and go, what does this mean?
That's true. That's part of the book. It was the unknowns, about life itself. I just didn't understand, but there was messages in time in my years that it was a symbol that continued to come to me, and I just didn't know what it was.
In the beginning of your book, in your preface, you write, the greatest mysteries in life are, who am I? Why am I here? What is life about?
Yeah.
And in the routine life, I was wondering, do you think that sometimes we just sort of fall asleep to these questions? And we need little wake-up calls every once and again to remind us that we do have a purpose.
Oh, yes, that's what I did for this book, because it was pulling me. We have a purpose on this earth, regardless. I don't know what it is, but you're here for a reason. For every reason, there's a purpose for you on earth.
And nothing is random.
That's right.
One that a passage that I liked. Not one experience in our life, good or bad, is random or unintended, and that is true. We should look back on our journey, and each person and experience holds a clue to help us solve life's mysteries. I wonder if we would know what to look for if we're looking back, or would it be lost forever? And that's a quote from your book of like, I could tell in the beginning of your book you were looking at, I'm trying to put the pieces together.
That's correct.
Trying to look at all of this and have it make sense. And as I read it, it felt like you were looking at your life's journey kind of like as a detective looking for clues.
That is so true. That is so true.
And then also, what does the picture look like, and what does it mean? Another thing that I want to get into in our next segment, we're going to need to go to break in just a minute or two. But you also talk about truth and how truth is so important. Learning about your Ojibwe truth, your ancestry, and your tribal connection is important. But you also talk about the authenticity, what you want to be, but what is, and what instead of what you want to be, looking at it squarely. You talked at one point about how you thought that your mother had abandoned you.
That's correct.
But you found out later that your grandmother had asked her to not confuse you.
That's absolutely correct.
But that truth, not having the truth, really impacted you.
I think so. I think me and my brother, because at that time it was very rare to see divorces, and I went to Catholic school, but then I moved around a lot, and I was teased a little bit because of the moving. And
not having a mother.
That's true. And I put that in my book. I didn't understand, and I had to move forward. And that's how I looked at it. And I put in my book that I prayed for a mother.
And you were disconnected not only from your birth mother, but you were disconnected then from your Ojibwe roots. That's
absolutely correct. I just didn't know what it was. But in time, I knew what was coming.
Well, when we come back after break, I'd like to share more about your connecting back to the Ojibwe tribe.
Okay.
And some signs that were very dramatic in bringing you back to the Ojibwe tribe, and those signs and how they have been with you from that point forward, and how they became a guide for you. And I'll look forward to having that be shared with our audience. And you're listening to AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, here on Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter.
Wow.
Welcome back to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and today we have the opportunity to have a conversation with Scott Rue. He has just written a book that came out in September 2022, and the title of the book is Everything Has Meaning, What the Tree Stand Murders Taught Me About Life, Death, and Destiny. This is available on Amazon. Very easy to look up. You just go to Amazon. The author is Scott Roux, R-O-U-X. And you just start typing in Everything Has Meaning, and it pops right up, and there it is. And you can get it both on Kindle or as a paperback. Welcome back, Scott. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you. I'm really enjoying you.
Well, I'm enjoying having you here and having us explore your ideas in your book and where they have led you and where you are now. We left at the last segment talking about a sense of truth and how truth is very important to you. And you feel that truth, the authenticity, really looking at truth, not just what you want it to be, but what the truth is, allows you to start to get access to what the meaning is. So your mother, who you were estranged from,
That's correct.
you adored your stepmother.
Oh,
you prayed for your
absolutely.
stepmother to come into your life.
Mm-hmm.
She came into your life, was one of your best friends, and it was awkward for your birth mother to know how to connect. But all of a sudden, she comes into your life and says, "Oh, by the way, you're Ojibwe and you're registered and you have a check waiting for you."
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they were old. I guess according to their tribe, there was old treaty checks that were supposed to be given to the government in 1854, and so my mother said it was just a small amount, but it was a check for us. There was two of them because we were enrolled by my grandfather, her father, and so I didn't realize we were registered as natives on Mole tribe. And so I went there, but all of a sudden the Big Eagle came.
So you're driving along and you're with your mother. So this is kind of an interesting experience in itself, that you're with your mother and you haven't spent a whole lot of time
That's correct.
with your birth mother.
That's correct.
And you've seen eagles and you've noticed eagles before,
Yeah.
but not like this eagle.
Not like this one. It was so rare and so unique to me because when I was driving to the reservation, a big eagle came towards me.
And we're talking huge wingspan.
Beautiful, big ones. I say about 6 feet each or whatever. To me, it was so big. And it came towards us, and I actually had to pull over.
You were frightened. In the book,
I was.
you talk about how it keeps coming closer and closer, and you really think that the eagle is trying to dive bomb you.
Yes, that's correct. That's so true.
And what are you going to do? Because and both of you are kind of stunned as this eagle is getting closer and closer and closer.
Yep.
But as you pull over and the eagle comes down, it does a sudden shift.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, when it took off, but it swerved again. I remember it clearly. And then when we pulled over, it took off, and it took off to the air up on the top.
And at one point, did it almost give you a side look?
Yeah, it did.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yep.
I mean, you think of eagles with a hunt, and their eyes dart.
Right.
But I haven't ever thought of an eagle, or I've never seen an eagle be so intent on making a connection to a human that it even gives you a side eye.
It really did. I remember seeing it, but I was so stunned by it because it made me stop my car because of it. And I can bring this up, too. I went there 3 years ago. It happened to me and my brother when we drove the same way. The eagle came right towards us to our car, 1 mile away.
And the elders let you know
Yes.
that it was a welcoming.
Yes. They said the spirit world is connecting to you, and we're welcoming you to our Ojibwe tribe.
How did you feel about that?
I felt really good. I felt warm. I felt there was a reason for this, And I didn't understand it, but I had to research and learn and figure it out more and more in my years to come.
What did you learn?
I learned why nature and symbols today on Earth gives you messages and receive these messages, and they're a connection to you, and it gets more aware of anything you see or do. There is a message, and that's how I figured it out a little bit.
I've always loved that the Ojibwe especially talk about the two-legged and the four-legged and the winged and the finned as our brother and sisters.
Yeah.
And that they each bring medicine. And it's not the medicine of I'm going to take my penicillin. The medicine is really about how they can support us in having us understand our meaning and purpose.
Yes.
And they bring medicine in terms of having us relate and understand and get the messages. And they become spirit guides.
That is so true. And after researching and talked to some of the elders and spiritual leaders, they said the same thing what you just said. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting.
And the eagle is one to bring messages.
Yes. The messages, it's a number of things if you look at the eagle. Mm-hmm. It's a good sign. Be aware of things, pushing you forward. According to a lot of different tribes, including Ojibwe, they're good signs. It's from the heavens. And I put that in my book.
And as you have become comfortable mm-hmm. with what the eagle means, you also became eager.
Yes.
There were times you were talking, you did a lot of sales, and interestingly enough, you were selling tobacco, which
yes.
is also a holy
yes.
part of the rituals of the Ojibwe tribe, one of the holy.
Yes.
But nothing in excess. And I think sometimes there's an acceptance that, well, tobacco is a good thing with the Native Americans. It is, but it's not to be overdone.
Right.
It's to be done in balance with the world, just like everything should be done in balance.
Mm-hmm.
So here you are out doing sales, tobacco mm-hmm. sales.
Yeah.
And you'd also you tend to be disappointed if you didn't see the eagle. Like, is there something wrong?
Well, that's true. Because once I started to be aware of that eagle, I always wanted him to be by me. And I didn't understand it, but it would all sun come in time, mm-hmm. especially mm-hmm. if I went to a reservation or somewhere I provided something, the eagle would be there. And it was really unique. For example, I went to a couple reservations providing samples of our products. And then when I left, the eagle would come. Mm-hmm. And that's what it was so unique. So it was a message saying maybe Miigwech, thank you.
Miigwech, yes.
And I don't know what it was, but I had to find in time. This was my journey mm-hmm. in my years, what that eagle was starting to mean to me and what was the purpose of that eagle.
At the end of your book, you have an epilogue that you talk about the secrets that you've discovered. And the first one I think is interesting, and we'll go through all of them.
Okay.
The first one is be open to the unknown, the miracles. Yeah. When you started to have visions, and you talk about the visions, you talk about an orb, you talk about mm-hmm. Seeing letters and people, and you knew you were awake, you were pinching yourself.
Yes, that's correct.
You were first kind of uncomfortable, like, is this real or am I crazy? And they left you a little conflicted. But in time, you grew to appreciate that the unknown was okay. That's
true. Actually, that was what you're saying right now is exactly true. I didn't understand mm-hmm. what it meant. I had to figure it out in my years to come. Mm-hmm. But I did see the messages and signs and symbols, what they meant, and they were pushing me to my journey. Mm-hmm.
We've talked outside of this interview how I took Ojibwe for my second language.
Yes,
and,
very impressive.
I had a friend who was Native who we took a psychology class together with, and I loved her dearly. And she was having the toughest time. We were taking abnormal psychology, toughest time. And I said, well, they're trick questions. This is one of those entry classes that you have to learn a lot, and they like doing trick questions. And I thought that's why she was having challenges. So we studied together, and she'd either not pass or just pass. And then one day she came knocking on my dorm door, and she was so excited. She goes, I get it now. And I go, well, what do you get? She goes, I didn't understand that you white people think visions are bad, and you think that's abnormal. We think it's a gift. But now that I understand that you think it's bad, I think I can do this test now, because I just didn't understand that you made it bad. We don't think it's bad. And I thought of that. I thought of that conversation when you shared about it, because there is a part of us that wants to say that's wrong. Mm-hmm. And then the natives just embrace it as you've just gotten a gift.
Well, that's what I didn't understand, but it came pretty strong since I had my transfer from San Francisco, California. Mm-hmm. And then I think my spirit in time, as I wrote this book, it was pulling me. The mm-hmm. spirit was pulling me back mm-hmm. home. and it took me 61 years to figure that out. And so, what you were saying about the visions and dreams, there is a connection, but everyone keeps it to themselves.
Sure.
But this book had to have the meaning and the purpose why I had to write this book, because it was all connected.
The next thing you have is There Are Angels Among Us. Find one and stay close. Tell me about that.
Well, when I was a little boy, when my parents got a divorce when we were 5 and 3, I have another brother, it's Greg, born on the same day. And I always think there's someone always special in your circle of life. That's my personal opinion. And she guided me to my journey in a lot of ways, gave me a step to it. And I looked at her as an angel because she had the kind heart and pushed me to believe in something. And
was this your grandmother?
Yes, my grandmother. And I'll never forget her because I even have friends because of her, because she always cooked. She was the German character of her. She loved cooking, baking, and it was a family thing. But when I needed her, she was there for me, and she invested a lot of time in her life to do this for me.
And you've forgiven her in some ways because she's the one that didn't want you to be confused. So you knew that her heart was in the right place.
That's right.
But she did send your mother away that you had to, deal with later in life.
That's true. And I'm glad you brought that up. And that's where I think the truth is important. But as my grandma was really protecting me and Greg for our new stepmother.
Right.
And I think she was just doing the best for us.
And she helped you pray about having your mother come to your life.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. They all come if you believe. And I thought that's what I needed for a family, and the connection with me and my brother and a stepbrother I had with my stepmother. So it was a great family and a great people.
Well, we're going to need to go to break again, but your next secret to life was also something that she gave you, and that is believe in something bigger than you, and to search for it and commit to it, and believing in something bigger so that we can become bigger ourselves.
That's true.
And I'd love to have that be what we start out in our conversation in our next segment, to share about what did that mean to you, and what were some of your discoveries in finding your God. Because that's what it comes down to, is finding the God that allows us then to be connected so that we're not alone and that we're not isolated. And I'd love to have you share with me the God that you discovered for yourself.
Okay, I sure will. I'd be glad to.
All right, and we'll do that in the next segment. And you're listening to AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. And this is Connections Radio Show, and I'm your host, Lori Fitz, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. So glad that you've been with us today. It's been a wonderful conversation that we've been having with Scott Rue. He has written the book, Everything Has Meaning, What the Tree Stand Murders Taught Me About Life, Death, and Destiny. Scott, thank you so much for sharing your ideas and your thoughts and your journey and searching for meaning. Thank
you again. I really enjoying you and the 950 AM radio station.
We have fun here. And
I can see that.
We have good conversations, and I'm enjoying having you be part of our Connections family.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm honored.
In the end of your book, we had started to talk about the epilogue, and in the epilogue, you give some secrets that you've discovered as you've reviewed your journey, and you encourage others to be looking for their secrets. These secrets maybe apply. They might review and look at it for their life, but you also kind of encourage people to look for their secrets. And we talked about the first secret was be open to the unknown. Second secret was there are angels among us, and you shared the story of your grandmother and how she helped guide you. The next was believing in something bigger than you. And it really was your journey for finding God
Mm-hmm.
and how to commit to something bigger so that we can become bigger.
That's true. That's very
the
true.
underlying secret. So tell me about the God you discovered.
Well, when I was a little kid, 5 years old, I didn't know much about a God. But my grandma, which I just spoke to you about my grandma, she said, believe in something. So I had Catholic roots in me. And then later in time, I still have that in my heart, but then the spiritual of the Ojibwe, Mother Earth, was more appealing to me because it was all connected at one to me in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought this part of my epilogue was important because sometimes young adults are not ready for this or for religion. So I'm not here to choose each sides of what religion you're into, but believe in Mother Earth, nature may find that for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it did to me.
And in your journey of finding, what did you find?
Nature. This earth, my heart and soul comes to me and feels right. Mm-hmm. And so when I see nature as, for example, the eagles, the birds, animals, deers, there's a purpose for that. Trees. Mm-hmm. There's all a meaning to that. Mm-hmm. We just don't know, and I'm only here for a certain amount of time.
I love the idea also in the Ojibwe that everything has a life force. It has the Manitou, and that the Manitou are asleep now because it's snowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we can tell stories.
Yeah, that's right.
As the Manitou, and that's all part of the nature's journey. Your fourth secret to life was pray with all your heart. Mm-hmm. Always begin by giving thanks for blessings, mm-hmm. and then have conversations with God, mm-hmm. and you will receive answers. Mm-hmm. And you called your prayers your alone time.
That's correct.
And your alone time is in nature.
It's in nature. And then, like I said, I do volunteer at St. Jude. I clean the church and the gift shop, but it gives me that time, too, to listen and pray. Mm-hmm. And that would be my 10-minute pray there. And then in the morning, and when the sun comes up, I pray with my sage, and mm-hmm. I do my spirit that way and heal from the morning, mm-hmm. from the east.
And then your fifth, which is the title of your book as well, yes. is Everything Has Meaning.
Yes.
Everything has purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And as I read that, I thought to myself that there is the pattern, there's the circle and the Ojibwe circle, and seeing the picture mm-hmm. on the puzzle mm-hmm. starts to come to life. And as we look at the Ojibwe circle, would you like to share a little bit about the circle with us?
Well, the circle, according to the Ojibwe, it has a circle of life. It has north, south, east, and west. And they have all colors into this circle of the wheel. And in my time and experience in researching that, there was a purpose for that wheel. And I didn't understand it, but it has different stages and different ages of the circle of the wheel. There's the youth. That's correct.
Of the East.
Yes.
It starts with the young in the East.
Yes.
Then it goes to the youth of the South, the adult of the West, and the elder in the North.
North. That's correct.
And you felt like you were pulled back to Minnesota in your adult and elder as we move into our elder years, that this felt like a right place to be.
It was. I received my transfer, and it just felt like I was receiving wisdom and learning mm-hmm. in my life what these experiences were. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm going to circle back, speaking of the circle,
yes.
To the beginning of our interview when we talked about your near-death experiences. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you had 3 near-death experiences, one before you were born, mm-hmm. one not being part of the massacre mm-hmm. of the tree stand murders in mm-hmm. Rice Lake, Wisconsin, and that horrible experience. But you learned something from that, mm-hmm. And then your own near-death experience in getting hit by a truck. Mm-hmm. You talk about your dad in the book.
That's right.
It goes through. It's one of the constant streams that come up, and trying to make sense out of his life. Very good man.
Yes.
Worked very hard. Things that you assumed about him as you got older, you discovered the truth
Yes.
that was different than what you expected, and the loss of him. There was even more of a heartbreak in realizing how much you needed him in your life, and he was gone.
Yes.
In also looking at the Ojibwe belief that we achieve our purpose and the Great Spirit brings us home because
that's right.
we've now achieved what we need to. Do you have any thought or sense of connection that your dad achieved a purpose?
I do. After years and time to come, he had a purpose. He had to take care of his position in his lifetime, do the best he can as a family, but he represented the union of AFL-CIO. And I do talk a little bit about the book, how important spending his 35 years of work, which I only saw maybe 2 hours a day. I mean, so it made me learn how strong this man was and how he was voted by his peers, and then being who he is today, and that was his purpose, to be a leader at that position at that time at A.L. Smith Corporation, made American car frames. But it taught me to not be so selfish, but I was a young kid trying to learn. And when I got to this age, I said, boy, I just didn't realize how much my father did all the good things, and when I was doing this and that, I wanted his attention, and I didn't have that because he was so drawn to his position, but now I know why. He was a really great man, and he did everything he could on this earth.
You felt after the murders and he being such a part of this and the PTSD of that,
Yes.
that he died of a broken heart.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I believe that 100%.
Could there be another way of looking at it that isn't about a broken heart but a discovery? You know, could there be a sense that he, even though your heart was broken?
Yeah. It was broken, but I think the message was sent when he was in the deer hunting that day. He saw an eagle. My distant cousin and my father saw that eagle half an hour to an hour before they went in the woods. And so according to I find out from my spiritual leader was Fred, and he told me that he was protected. Both of them were. And so when he passed away, the eagles were there. 5 eagles on the road, 1 looking down. And it was a total of 4 when it was a number of the eagles, but it was a message sent to me.
And your father did come to you.
Yes, he did. That is absolutely right. And I'm glad you mentioned that on this interview, because that was my message and my message to write this book, because there was a purpose of everything, because it was all connected.
And what did your father tell you?
Wisdom and what he gave me in my life, and thank you for the unknown. I mean, I found he took my wings, flew me like an eagle.
And he also, didn't he share that he was okay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did with the orb. I forgot to tell you about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really unique. It was like 10 seconds. He touched me, and
But you heard his voice.
I heard his voice.
Clear.
Yep. It was unbelievable, and I had to keep that to myself for many years because I didn't think no one would believe me.
Did having his voice give you more of a sense of peace in his passing?
Yeah, absolutely. It was probably the biggest piece. But then the messages were coming out stronger after that happened. I was seeing more things, symbols and signs.
And empathy for those who have PTSD. A recognition that perhaps the PTSD is also trying to teach us something.
I believe in that. I really do. I think there was a message sent. I know that when I was researching, I had someone help me with it. We're not medical doctors, but there was a percentage that would have heart attacks less than 120 days with massacre shooting.
But you also saw him as a hero.
Yes.
And the hero that he was in
Absolutely.
in staying with your cousin as
Yes.
long as he did, even though he was in danger himself. He did not leave the side of your cousin.
That is really true. And one thing I would have to say about that, he did receive the Carnegie Medal for heroism, but my distant cousin, David Drew, did not receive it, but he was a big part of that because they were both carrying him out of the woods. So I wanted to mention that, too, because he had the PTSD, but it was hidden.
Yeah. What I also want to recognize at the end of our show here is how much of your own persistent spirit you have in facing some of the challenges you've had to face after your brain injury, and what you've learned in that. There's an amazing piece when you look up the book on Amazon. They give an overview, and they say, when 2 tons of truck smashed into his vehicle, Scott Rue's life would never be the same. Leaving the hospital with a broken foot, severe headache, and a sore back, Scott thought that's all he had to do was to heal. But the traumatic brain injury would change his life forever. Losing his short-term memory and his ability to continue as an executive salesman, his comprehension dropped initially to a 3rd grade level. How could he continue a life where he wasn't what he used to be? Scott used his passion for his life to push himself toward the face of a crippling circumstances. Now he shares his secrets to fulfilling life with you. Through stories of the past and hope for the future, this book will help you understand that everything has meaning.
Well, thank you. You're absolutely right. And that's one thing I want to do and share it to others. Mm-hmm. Part of the proceeds are going to go to St. Jude Senior Center in the Mole Lake Tribe. Mm-hmm. So I want to give something back on this earth because I think that's what we're all here for, to help each other out.
Are there any closing thoughts that you want to make sure that the audience thinks about? We always like to have something for the audience to do or think about as you have finished this book. And, of course, buying the book is a good thing. Yeah. So you can go out and do that. But is there something else that you'd like to have the audience think about?
I want them to think about, to enjoy life, and there's a meaning for it, and there's a purpose for everyone on earth here. Appreciate what you have and learn the experiences on Mother Nature, the earth itself, animals, anything that you see, and always, out of your heart, give and show your wisdom, or give that wisdom to others. That's why you have that, and that's how many years you're on this earth. Share that to others so they can be wiser and smarter and stronger.
And pay attention in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, 100%.
That nothing is random.
That's right.
That this is a moment to share.
That's right.
This is a moment to stop and acknowledge, give thanks.
Yes, absolutely.
Appreciate, and as you struggle, allow yourself to be open to new thoughts.
And like I said, surround yourself by good people, or they're, like I said about angels, they're on earth, and those are your best friends.
Thank you, Scott, for joining us today.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you so much for everything. I mean that.
Thank you for joining us today. Again, the book is Everything Has Meaning by Scott Rue. You can buy it on Amazon, and I highly encourage you to do so. And have a wonderful week. We'll look forward to having you come back to Connections Radio Show next Saturday morning, 9 a.m. here on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota.